Omegyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshormilitanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hello and welcome to our Seeking the Essence podcast. I'm your host, Vishaka Dasi. I'm speaking from sunny Ojai in Southern California. I wanted to share a treasure from my visit in Northern California, Chico, a few weeks ago. Had a very cool interview with our dear friend, Professor Jason Clower, Professor of Comparative Religion at Chico State University. And he brought up this subject. Well, the conversation started with this subject of how to pray. And then we went into other interesting places. And I hope you'll get something out of this. Haribol.
I've always wondered about how prayer works with Vaishnavas. You mentioned prayer again the other day, and you said, in a way, it might be my most important practice. And I want to hear all about how it works, starting with this little question. Friends that I know in other faiths who are theists, but not Vaishnavas, I think they think that God always has an open line to them, that they just, any thought that they verbalize in their minds is a communication to him, potentially. But my impression with Krishna is that we don't automatically have his attention, that, he's a busy guy, he's not necessarily listening to my every thought, and that I might need to kind of attract his attention. I don't know if I can even speak and make myself heard. So how does prayer work as a Vaishnava?
You've reminded me of, it's not an elementary question. I think it's a great question. You've reminded me of one expression in a song of Bhakti Vinod Thakur about Sharanagati, surrender. And the line is, he's like speaking about the 6 limbs of surrender. And then at the conclusion of the song, he says, Sharanga Sharanagati Hoibe Jahar Tahara Partana Shune Srinanda Kumar. Saying that one who upholds these 6 limbs of Sharanagati, Sri Nanda Kumar, means Krishna, the son of Nanda, he hears their prayers. So, as you said, it's indicated here, there is a filter system. Right? And if that's your goal, like Krishna of Vrindavan, that Krishna, because there's other forms of Krishna, there's also Vishnu. There are so many different forms and expansions which Krishna takes. But if that's your goal, Krishna of Vrindavan, then, your prayer has to be coming from a place of surrender, right? Not a self-centered prayer, not a self-centered approach. But you're approaching him because you want to surrender, right? To his world, to his will, and so on. So the prayers of the surrendered souls, Krishna hears the prayers of the surrendered souls. So yes, it is something to consider. Overall, I would say what I've understood and what my feeling is, what's stated in places in the scriptures, that and this is also what the whole system of the Veda is based upon, that any type of approach is a good approach. Right? Whatever your motives are, if you're approaching Krishna or any higher entity, it's a good thing, right? The whole of the Veda is based on this idea, let's find a slot for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then the idea is that, the thing is, you're approaching something beyond yourself, you're approaching something with the highest purifying power. So just by making some approach of any kind, if there's any hint of sincerity within you, there's going to be some purification that takes place. And by dint of that purification, you'll be able to develop, to a degree that will enable you to make a pure type of prayer, right? So it's like what Krishna wants is that you depend on him, right? For whatever it may be, right? But just by making that approach, you're opening yourself up to that higher purifying wave, right? And this is mentioned in different places. There's one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's Krishna speaking, saying that kama, what is it? Moksha udaradi. It's saying that whether one is approaching me because they want something, because they're seeking something in this world, or because they want liberation, or it's like a sincere inquiry, for me, whatever it is, they're intelligent, they're wise, right? And then in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also mentions 4 types of persons they approach me. No, is that referring to? Yeah, so someone who's suffering, someone who's seeking after some type of material gain, persons who are just curious, speculating, whimsical, and then the jnani, like the sincere, enlightened inquirer. But he says all of these persons are fortunate, all of them are dear to me. Right? Of course, the person truly seeking enlightenment, I hold them the most dear. But all of these persons have fortune. All of these persons have some grace, just because they're able to make any type of approach to me. That's the premise of everything that we're doing. That wherever we are, there's room for us, right? But yes, at the same time, it's healthy to have some sincere introspective, looking within our heart, like how pure is my prayer? That's, just the fact that you're asking that question, right? That means you're in a good place, right? That's a very good sign. That means you're a sincere seeker. And then another thing which I can add here is that, like, when we say Krishna, it doesn't exactly mean Krishna a lot of the time, right? Depending on context. It's like when Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam rajaya, right? He's saying, like, give up everything, surrender to me. Like, what does that me actually mean? Like, and this is actually one of the points why that, like, this verse, it's 1866. It's like the number one verse amongst Hare Krishnas. Right? Krishna saying, give up all of the duties and come to me. But then we see in other places that verse is kind of held a little bit in question. Like, well, it's very vague. Krishna's not actually telling us very much here, right? Like, Vaishnavism is actually about surrendering to the Vaishnava, actually. This was something our Gurudev pointed out once. Like, a superficial understanding of Vaishnavism is that you're a servant of Vishnu or Krishna. But a deeper understanding is that you're, das anu das, as we say, right? Servant of the servant. Like, that's a deeper understanding. So first level is we surrender to Krishna, but then deeper understanding is we're actually surrendering to the Vaishnava. And then in this famous discussion in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramananda Samvad, there's this whole back and forth where Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is posing the questions, Ramananda is giving the answers, and they're going through this systematic gradation of theism, which is just incredible. And Ramananda is like making a proposal based on scripture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is systematically rejecting all of his proposals up into a certain point, and then he says, okay, this is okay, now let's go deeper into this. But that verse of Bhagavad Gita they come to that verse at a certain point. This is like the highest point of Bhagavad Gita, pretty much. And Mahaprabhu says, Eho Baya. This is external. Like, he rejects that verse. So it's like quite an important point. And why? Why does he reject it? The main point that our gurus have made is that there's no sadhu sangha there. There's no connection of the Vaishnava there. So it's superficial. So what does Krishna actually mean when he says surrender to me? He's saying, like, approach me through my devotees, actually. Like, surrender to my devotees. So when we say Krishna, generally it's like we're referring to a whole system. You know, there's Krishna, there's Radha, you know, there's Baladev, you know, there's all of their associates, right? And so, you know, like I really appreciate how broad Srila Sridhar Maharaj's explanations are and terms that he uses. Like, he'll say the absolute a lot. He'll say the upper world. He'll talk about our invisible guardians. You know, it's like we're being given this sense that there's this whole wonderful invisible world above us, and they're taking care of us. You know, there's a whole system. You know, and so a lot of the time when like in my own, like on a personal level, a lot of the time I'll pray to Krishna, but I don't exactly mean Krishna. I mean like all the good people up top, like, you know, which I talked with my mother yesterday, and she actually brought this exact point up herself. We haven't talked about it before, so it's interesting. It's coming up again, but she like mentioned something about Krishna. She'd say, well, actually, you know, when I say Krishna, mostly I mean Gurudev. I mean Guru. You know, like it's kind of just we will often use Krishna in that sense of like, you know, all the divine beings who are our caretakers. You know, so we'll often, sometimes we may be specifically talking about Krishna, but yeah, it's not like we're thinking like, you know, we're like, we've got Krishna like on our, you know, our speed dial, you know, like we have a direct personal relationship. You know, we may never have that actually, you know, like we're actually not constitutionally equipped to directly interface. We'll feel his connection will come through others, but generally, like for the jivatma, like our constitutional, his nature is such. It's like Srila Sridhar Maharaj gives the example of the sun, that like how much of the sun can we actually handle? So it's like Krishna, like the intensity of Krishna's beauty and Krishna's charm, like how much are we actually equipped to have? Like there's a particular point, there's a particular sweet spot, right? So it's the same in relation with Krishna. So yeah, you know, like in my own case, sometimes I'll pray, probably most of the time I'll pray to my guru. Then I will say Krishna a lot, but I'm not exactly thinking, Krishna, the blue boy in Vrindavan, but I mean, like, he's got a lot of people working for him, and I know they're looking out for me, so we're praying, like, I know there's someone listening, and I don't know, I may not know exactly who it is,
A representative will be with you shortly.
Right. There you go.
Okay, so you jumped to my next question. So you might address prayers to Gurudev.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, and this is perhaps particularly so in the Rupa Nuga line, right? Like within the world of Vaishnavism, right? It seems to me that particularly the Rupa Nuga line, like those in the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the line of Rupa Goswami, they put particular emphasis on what we call the ashray. Right? These are two terms, I don't know if you've come across them, but ashray and vishay. And vishay, it means... it can mean like an object of enjoyment, but we use it ashray and vishay. We use vishay to refer to Krishna, like as the enjoyer. Krishna is like licensed to be an enjoyer. And he's equipped for that. But we're not, unfortunately. And that's why we have a hard time in this world. Because we're trying to assume that position of the Vishai, of the enjoyer. But our nature is actually on the other side, the Ashrai, who supplies enjoyment, who is to be enjoyed. And we also use it particularly to refer to like a divine being who's in that position of like giving guardianship and care to others and also supplying enjoyment to Krishna. So like Krishna's Vishai, Radha is Ashrai, Guru, like literally Ashrai means shelter, right? At least as far as I know, that's how we normally hear it. But we also use it, this terminology is used in Chaitanya Charitamrita, like when there's this explanation as to why Krishna decides to appear as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like he wants to experience, like there are three principal reasons mentioned, and right at the beginning of this text, Charitamrita. And one of them is that he wants to experience what it's like to be in that position of the ashray, right? Like to be on the other side, right? So we actually put more, like in our lineage, we actually put more emphasis on the ashray, right? And there are some like radical prayers out there in that regard. Like Raghunath Das Goswami, he was one of the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his time. We also call him the Prayojan Acharya, right? So these phrases, Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan, Sambandha, knowledge of relationship, our place within the whole. You came up with a nice explanation of Sambandha. Wasn't that you the other day?
It was the first time you explained it to me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like the kind of it made me feel suddenly settled. Like, okay, now I know what I am.
Yeah, so that's Sambandha, and then Abhideya, like what's the path, the practice, the sadhana, Prayojam, what's the goal, right? Krishna prema, and Abhideya, the practice, bhakti, devotion, practices of devotion. So we also have three acharyas, three teachers who are particularly associated with these three principles, and because they've expounded on them quite a lot. And so Raghunath Das Goswami, he's known as our Prayojan Acharya. He's elaborated much on like what is the goal, and he is particularly known for his like fanatical, you could say, devotion for Radha, for Srimati Radharani, like over Krishna. And so ultimately it's about Radha Dasyam, like the service in our lineage. This is kind of like an open secret of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, I suppose you could say, or at least the Rupanuga Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Like it's actually like if you like lift the lid and like, oh, it's actually all about her. Like in the beginning it's all Krishna, 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 but now I'm looking a little deeper. It's actually really about Radharani. So Raghunath Das Goswami, it's very significant. He's known as the Prayojan Acharya, and he expresses this extreme devotion for Radharani. And there's one prayer of his which is it's very bold actually. This a very beautiful Ashabare Amrita Sindhu Mayai Katanchit Kalo Mayati Gamita Kila Sampratam Hi Tvam Chet Kripam Aividasasi Naiva Kimme Praner Rajena Cha Varuru Bakari Napi. And he's describing how I've been carrying on. This is like written at the end of his life. He's like in his 80s or something. And by the way, another thing about Raghunath he's known for his extreme vairagya, his extreme renunciation. Like nobody beats him in that regard. Like he actually came from a billionaire's family by today's standards. Like they were very, like the Rockefellers, very wealthy people. But he rejected everything, and his renunciation was like beyond anyone else's. Like he, like very extreme, just living on practically nothing under trees in Vrindavan. But oh yeah, but he, so in this prayer he's saying, like, I've spent my whole life, waiting for your mercy, Radharani. And he describes this, and he's like, this hope, I'm living, like I'm sustaining myself on this hope, this asha, this hope that I will get your mercy. And he describes, this is actually one of my favorite topics, how really Krishna consciousness is about an aspiration. Like, it's not that you actually ever have it. But it actually exists within the aspiration to have it. And you see this point mentioned in a few places in the prayers of our gurus, including like the founding shloka, the founding verse that Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote when he was beginning this mission in 1942. He uses that phrase as well, Radha Jitasha, this asha, this aspiration, like it's all founded on that. So here Raghunath saying, and he compares this asha to Amrita Sindhu. It's like an ocean of nectar, like just that hope, that's been filling me with joy, and that's been helping me carry on all these years. And but then he's saying in this verse, but now I'm like, I'm like at my last tether, like I can't wait anymore, like please give me your mercy. And then he's saying, and then he says, he takes it a step further, and he says, without your mercy, everything is worthless to me. He says, my pran, my very life is worthless. And then he goes further and he says, even Vrindavan is worthless without you. Then he raises the stakes even more, and he says, even Krishna is useless to me. Like, who is Krishna without you?
Whoa.
I know, exactly. It's a whoa moment. And not only that, but the name that he refers to Krishna by in this verse, he doesn't say Krishna, he says Bakadi Napi, means the destroyer of the Baka demon. This is like one of the asuras, the demons that tries to kill Krishna. So like Krishna, like he's saying, in other words, you're Krishna but a demon killer. Like without you, like you're the one who makes Krishna beautiful. You're the one who makes Krishna attractive and charming. Without you, he's just a demon killer. So it's like if you scratch the surface, you see like, wow, these Rupanugas are all about the devotee actually. And then we also have like, so many prayers also emphasizing the position of Guru. Like that same Raghunath, he kind of took shelter of Rupa Goswami as his guardian in his last years. And when Rupa Goswami left the world, I guess he was an extreme person, Raghunath. And so Raghunath, he's known for his attachment to Radharani. And the second thing he's known for is his attachment to Govardhan. And he has these beautiful verses, Govardhana Prarthana Ashtakam, where there's this refrain, Nija Nikata Nivasam Dehi Govardhana Tvam, like it's praying for residents at Govardhan, like, oh Govardhan, please give me shelter. So he has this particular attachment both to Radharani and to Govardhan. And he said, when you can go there now, where his Bhajan Kutir was, like in that area, on the banks of Radha Kund. I didn't explain properly. Like the Radha Kund, it's the lake of Radharani within Govardhan. Like he has a place where he stayed there. And but then, so Rupa Goswami was his guru. But when Rupa Goswami departed, when he left this world, left his body, Raghunath has these extreme prayers saying, Shunyayate Mahagoshtam Girinjo Jagarayate Shunyayate. He's saying that, like Shunya, like a void, like he's saying that, without my guru, Rupa, all these things which were previously so life-giving to me, they now feel inimical and even threatening. And he said he compares Radha Kund to like this tiger coming to devour me. And he says Govardhan is like a python coming to get me. Like without the ashray, like without the shelter of Guru, even these things, they've become frightening to me. So there's so much emphasis on the connection of Guru. Like there's that feeling that Guru is everything, right? And who that Guru is, it may also not necessarily be like within your physical field of vision right now. Like one thing that really blows my mind when I think about it, there's this. So this, I think I might have mentioned the other day, this song Shri Rupa Manjari Pada. It's like kind of like the anthem of the Gaudiya Vaishnava, like very sacred anthem of the Gaudiya Vaishnava. It's considered like our most sacred prayer, and we don't even sing it. We only we'll sing it if our guru sings it. It's not that there's anything, if you just read it like from an objective point of view, there's nothing in there that you'd think be like, why does this have to be like not sung? But it's that there's this just such a deep feeling that's being expressed there, and it mentions it's mentioning, like it's a very fervent prayer, like the feet of Rupa are everything to me, like my mantra, my japa, my sadhana, everything is the feet of Rupa. And it's a very like heartfelt prayer, but that prayer is written by Narottam Thakur, who never met Rupa. Actually, he's like a generation or two later. He never met Rupa. His guru was Lokanath. And then you'll find in another prayer of Narottam's, he actually says explicitly, and this is also, it's also very beautiful to consider like this, like the non-enviousness in Vaishnavas, right? Because like no doubt Lokanath is going to read this, but Rupa says in one of his prayers, like, when will my guru Lokanath take me by hand and give me to Rupa? Like, when will my guru Lokanath put me in, like, take my hand and give me to the hand of Sri Rupa, like that? He's expressing this hankering, but it's like there's just this beautiful kind of broadness and non-enviousness that you see in the, like another thing. Sometimes people, I mean, like our human minds are so limited, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita. His beloved son and disciple Saraswati Thakur also wrote a commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita. Saraswati Thakur's everything was Bhaktivinoda. It's not like, but then some people say like, why did he write a commentary when Bhaktivinoda wrote one? It's like, he didn't mean any disrespect, like Saraswati Thakur's everything was Bhaktivinoda. Like he's just like adding something, but so there's just, when you look, it's so inspiring to look at the exchanges that go on like between the Vaishnavas at the higher level. But yeah, so you find this in the Rupanuga line, this extreme adherence and feeling of necessity for the shelter of Guru. There's the feeling that everything is coming to me, like that whole like subtle, intangible, remote, abstract world. It's all coming to me in a tangible form, in the form of my Gurudev, and so this is everything,
Where are these prayers compiled?
That's a good question. Everything's scattered. Maybe we need your help, Jason. I mean, like everything I've learned, it's just been like from hearing a talk here from this Vaishnava, hearing a talk there from that Vaishnava, hearing a talk from my Gurudev, from my Param Gurudev, and then in our reading this book here, reading that book here, and just by their grace somehow assimilating something and forming some, making some sense of it all. But yeah, we don't have like a compendium exactly. Maybe we need your help with that.
It's a job for somebody with massive editorial energy.
We have some shloka books. We have you know what you may want to read is Prapana Jivanamrita. That's kind of like a compendium. That's on this. So this is like Srila Sridhar Maharaj's masterpiece, you could probably call it. It's a collection of verses which are illuminating the 6 limbs of Sharanagati, of surrender. And again, like going back to this topic of non-enviousness, it's very cool to see how non-discriminating he is in the way, because he collects verses from other Vaishnava Sampradayas also. Like a lot of them are from the Sri Sampradaya, from Ramanuja's line. There's quite a few from Kula Shekhar. He was I think he was like a king who was also considered an alwar, one of those alwars too, like a Rajarshi, like a saintly king type. So this Kula Shekhar wrote some really beautiful verses, devotional verses. And another one is Yamunacharya, he actually preceded Ramanuja, but in that Sri Sampradaya. So quite a lot of the verses are from them actually. And then there's also verses from the Shastra, from different sections of the scripture, from the Puranas, from the Upanishads, from Bhagavatam. And then there's, like heartfelt prayers from different Vaishnavas, including many of the ones I just mentioned, like Raghunath, like Rupa. So that would be a good place to start, actually. I mean, I think it's the best book ever, personally.
Wow,
yeah.
That's high praise.
Yeah, Prapana Jivanamrita. The meaning of it is life nectar of the surrendered souls. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj has this beautiful verse, which is kind of giving like a summary of what this book is about. And he included it, because he had the first chapter is like mostly his own verses. It's all Sanskrit, pure Sanskrit book. I'd actually be cool for Daniel to take it. And we've never, and this is one thing that's on my to-do list, except I don't know Sanskrit, so it's a stumbling block. But our Gurudev, so it's originally composed in Sanskrit, but it's never been published in Sanskrit. It was a Bengali translation was published, and we have an English translation published. But it's never been published. And that English translation does include like the Devanagari Sanskrit, but it's never been published like just as a Sanskrit text. And our Gurudev mentioned, like, for the dignity of his Guru Maharaj, he would like to do that. But yeah, so the first chapter is Srila Sridhar Maharaj's original verses, like the introduction, and the last chapter, what is it? It's Avashesh. It's all around nectar. So Avasheshamrita means like the remnants of nectar. And I forget the Sanskrit of the first one, but it's translated as prelude to approaching nectar. And then there's Shastra Vachanamritam, nectar from the Shastra, from the scripture. Then there's Bhakta Vachanamritam, nectar from the devotees. But then this verse, which he wrote in the conclusion, where he's kind of like giving his overall view on what this book is. It's our Gurudev, he mentioned once, I have 2 favorite verses of all time, and this is one of them. It's can't remember all of it. Shri Srimad Bhagavat Parambu Ja Madhu Sadotsavai Mat Pader Nikshipta Madhu Bindavashtra Padito Bhashta Mukha Gunjitai Yatner Kinchid Ihahitam Nija Padasrayo Tina Bhuyo Bhuya Itora Jamsi Pada Samlagani Tesham Vaje. Oh, I remember more than I thought. But he gives this wonderful, incredible analogy of, he compares Krishna to a lotus flower that has all this nectar, honey in it. And the devotees, they're like these bumblebees. that are like hovering around, and they're drinking that nectar. And they're drinking this nectar, and it's so good that they're inspired to sing the glories of Krishna while they're drinking it. While they're drinking the nectar of Krishna's association, Krishna Katha, and so on, they're also singing the glories of Krishna. Now, if you're drinking something and you're singing at the same time, what's going to happen?
I guess you'll choke.
Well, there's a lot that's spraying out.
Yeah.
So while they're singing and drinking this nectar, there are all these drops of nectar that are falling down. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj is concluding, saying, that's what this book is. I've collected all these drops of nectar that have been dropped by these Vaishnavas, like drinking and singing at the same time, the nectar of Krishna's lotus feet. And so I'm presenting that, and I'm humbly presenting that for the benefit, of all seekers in this book, Prapana Jivanamrita. Because that's exactly what it is. It's like you're getting these little drops and little hints of what goes on in the heart space of all these exalted persons. It's like you're being given like a peek, like a glimpse into their inner world, and it's a privilege.
Favorite book or best book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty superlative.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, Prapana Jivanamrita. Yeah, I mean, it's funny how we present things in different stages, or there's different levels of appreciation. Like in the beginning, we might talk about Bhagavad Gita, but then once you go a bit deeper, Bhagavad Gita in many ways feels not very relevant at all.
How come? Too shallow? Or?
Because there isn't much rasa in Bhagavad Gita. There isn't much of that, like what is the real stuff? It's the loving exchanges between the Lord and his devotees. And it's the sweetness and beauty of Krishna. Now the thing is, you can't jump right to that, because otherwise we'll become what we call sahajiya, imitationist. We'll sentimental, and we'll conflate like mundane emotion and spiritual emotion, right? That's why our approach has to be grounded in theology, in the philosophy, right? That's all important. One really nice point our Gurudev made was, if you look at different compositions that have come from some of the saints in our line, you see that they often begin with a lesson in theology, to the point where it can get a little boring, right? And then after that, then they'll get to the sweet stuff, right?
Yeah.
So like Chaitanya Charitamrita is like that, actually. It's the first 12 or 13 chapters, they can be kind of dry and heavy to get through. There's a lot of how the universe works and what are Krishna's different expansions and different points of theology and all these things, and can be kind of heavy going. It's like a science lesson or something. But then after that, it's all about Leela. Leela's the thing, right? It's Leela's the divine play of the Lord. And there's the sweetness, there's the beauty, there's the relationships between the Lord and his devotees. And so that's where and also Sharanagati. The real thing, for us especially, the real lesson is Sharanagati, surrender. But see, that's Bhagavad Gita is kind of describing the framework, right? And it's kind of giving you a grounding in the theology. But it doesn't go into Leela. It doesn't go into the pastimes. It doesn't, Sharanagati, surrender is something it's touched upon here and there, but it's not explored in a deep way. Not at all. Right? Then the importance of the Vaishnava, that is mentioned in a few places. But again, it's not going deep into that. So I suppose you could say Bhagavad Gita is like a nice introduction, right? And it's very nice too, because it's a reference point. Like everybody knows Bhagavad Gita, right? So it's like a good way to make contact with people. But once you start to actually get into the thing, then Bhagavad Gita won't feel so relevant, actually. And there are many verses in Bhagavad. It's interesting. You can look at many verses in Bhagavad Gita, and you can find a parallel verse in Bhagavatam, in the scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, which is talking about the same subject matter, but going much deeper into it. Like there are quite a few verses like that. You can see the connections. Like this is the level 1 understanding, then Bhagavatam's giving you the next. So, and then this book of Srila Sridhar Maharaj is this it's like this amazing compilation. It's just getting right down to what this is really about, Sharanagati. It's just dealing with that, like, your food, like no, like just like the real nourishment, like your real nutrients. It's there in Prapanit, because that's ultimately what we're about is the culture of Sharanagati, actually, more than anything else, more than what practices you're doing and whatever. It's about surrender. It's about Sharanagati. So this Papanajivnamrita, it's very valuable. And then so there's like the introductory chapter. There's the chapter on like verses from the ancient Shastra. It's like giving some credibility to this. Like this isn't just like the Hare Krishna saying this, but if you look at the scriptures properly, you'll see they're also talking about Sharanagati. And then you have these 6 chapters which are exploring in depth each of the 6 limbs of surrender: acceptance of the favorable, rejection of the unfavorable, embracing the Lord's guardianship, confidence in the Lord's protection, surrender and humility, full self-surrender, Atma Nivedan.
Is Prapanajivanamrita something that a person needs to work up to because it's an advanced text and first you have to read through something else? Or is it sort of appropriate to just open up?
I mean, our Gurudev, he mentioned once that he felt Prapanajivanamrita was the first book and the last book.
Oh.
And I feel like that too. I mean, the only thing is that for some people who are totally new, I may not recommend, because, when it comes to like Vaishnava saints, they're often quite fanatical. And so there are some quite extreme expressions which could kind of scare off some people. If they're like at an absolute no acquaintance stage, some of the verses could be a little intimidating for them. But otherwise, no. I mean, I feel like it's mostly it's like very heart-touching expressions of devotion for the Lord. So yeah. I would say, yeah. Go for it. Yeah. I mean, like for me, it's been it's been of incredible importance on my journey, that book.
Because that you've already gave it the back cover blurb, or like the
right.
The New York Times review that gets quoted on the bottom of the cover.
Yeah, that's probably all the preliminary information that you need. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, in terms of what you were saying, like, where do I find all these verses? It is help. Like all of Mahaprabhu's Shikshashtakam prayers are included there in different places. A lot of Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita. It's not that they're like presented, here's this text, here's that text, but they're being like inserted at different appropriate places where they're illuminating different principles. So yeah, it's a beautiful collection, yeah. And then the best part is Srila Sridhar Maharaj has his own unique illuminations. Like he's actually laying out his thought, and then kind of like if you're writing an essay, and then you'll cite someone to support what you're saying. Like you can also read it like that. Like you can read it as Srila Maharaj's verse collection, but you can also read it as Srila Maharaj's personal essay, and he's citing different references to support what he's saying. You can also read it like that, because then he's giving his own. There's like, if you look in each chapter, there's actually there's like a specific flow of thought. There's a specific development that's coming out, and he prefaces each verse with his own line, like, which is drawing out the essence of that verse, and it's done in a systematic way. So it's brilliant. Like in many ways, it's brilliant. Just like as a Sanskrit work, it's like all of his godbrothers, their minds were blown by that. And some of them, like, they just started reading it every day. One of them, he was reading a chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day, and when this came out, he switched over to Prabhupada Jivanamrita. And another interesting thing about Prabhupada Jivan, I love how this has suddenly become about Prabhupada Jivanamrita. Another interesting thing about Prabhupada Jivanamrita not many people know is that Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, his sister actually funded the first printing. And Prabhupada himself, when he took that historic journey across the Atlantic Ocean, he was traveling with a copy. He was carrying a box of Bhagavatams that he brought for distribution, but for his own reading, he was carrying 2 books, and he was carrying Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is more well known, but he also was carrying a copy of Prabhupada Jivanamrita, like for his personal nourishment.
What can you tell me about Srila Sridhar Maharaj's education? Because he seems like his mind was this very wide-ranging vacuum cleaner of information.
He grew up, as I recall, his family were, I think they were Bhattacharjas. It's like one of the higher level Brahmins, because there are also different types of Brahmins, like the Varnashram system is really complicated. And they were very highly cultured, educated people. They were all like, they spoke a household Sanskrit in his family.
Whoa.
In a little village, Hapanya, a few hours from Kolkata. And let me think now. I think he went, because this is during the time of the British Raj, right? And so he went to an English school. I've heard him mention at different teachers that he had, and he actually studied law. He had a BA in law. And our Gurudev mentioned that he studied all world philosophies except Russian? I can't remember. But he studied like most of the world's important philosophers and philosophies. I'm not sure how much of that was his own, like just what he did in his spare time, and how much was in like an academic environment. But yeah, he did have a very educated, cultured upbringing and background. And it was in the time, I suppose the fact that it was in the time of the British rule also meant like there was a lot of like outside, literature and culture ideas that were coming in. He'll quote Shakespeare, he quotes Milton quite a lot.
Yeah.
He quotes Berkeley, Descartes, he quotes so many different philosophers, and his grasp of the English language is extraordinary. I have to go bring out the dictionary sometimes, but it's interesting though, he like his English was so, expert, but he mentioned that he couldn't grasp the intonation of English speakers very well. Is at one point his guru, because amongst his peers he became known, for his brilliance, and there was one statement that his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, made about him. He called him Shastra Nipun Sridhar, like expert in Shastra. And that name Sridhar is also very significant because there's a renowned Sridhar Swami. He's a renowned Vaishnava commentator on Bhagavat, I think primarily Bhagavatam and perhaps other scriptures. He's from another lineage. He's like from 1,000 years ago or something. I don't remember which Vaishnava lineage he was a part of. But that was also significant. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave him that name. And then Bhakti Rakshak means guardian, like a Rakshak, like a guardian protector of Bhakti, devotion. So it was a very, very special name he gave him. And he became known for his brilliance, actually. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he would give, like his English, if you look, he has some essays in English, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and they're very difficult to follow, actually. Like he wrote in a very sophisticated, complex way in the English language. And there was a point, behind that. This was at a time where the dignity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was under threat. And he's showing this isn't just a bunch of bums, right? So like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like he was trying to convince the good educated classes, we're decent people. And and Saraswati Thakur also, I mean, like really, like some of his, there, like one in particular I've looked at, an introduction to the Brahma Samhita, and it's incredible, his English. It's difficult to follow, and so his talks were often like that too, like Bengali English talks, and it's we've heard, after his talks, generally his disciples would all like congregate, like, what did he just say, and there were two people in particular, like who they would come to, and Sridhar Maharaj was one of them. Like they would like, please can you explain to us like everything he just said, and another one was Ananta Vasudev. I mentioned him the other night. Yeah. They were good friends actually, because Ananta Vasudev appreciated Srila Sridhar Maharaj's brilliance. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he came in a little later. He wasn't there like at the very beginning of Saraswati Thakur's mission, so he had like a little bit of a junior position. But because of his brilliance, then he, quickly came to be, honored within the group. So yeah, and another interesting point, like on what you've brought up, Saraswati Thakur himself, he came from a Kayasta caste. The Kayastas, they're sometimes considered like Kshatriyas, sometimes considered like Shudras, like businessmen usually. It's like, little lower caste. Yeah. And for that reason, Saraswati Thakur, he very much appreciated persons who came from like a higher social status, just because it helped in the preaching. Like he had another disciple, Bhakti Saranga Goswami, who he came from a really high Goswami line, and they were in the bloodline of Nityananda Prabhu.
Whoa.
So like he had his whole family were considered worshipable for many persons. So he came and took shelter as a disciple from Saraswati Thakur. And so there were different occasions when Saraswati Thakur would send him like to deal with different things, because he knew how much everyone would respect him. And so similarly, when Sridhar Maharaj came and said he wanted to take initiation, Saraswati Thakur, he chanted this verse from Bhagavad Gita, this yad achareti shreshtas, saying that the common people will follow whatever a great man does. So he felt, someone like Sridhar Maharaj, like with his type of background of culture, education, social status, so like it increased the prestige of their mission. So yeah, that was definitely something that was noted, his level of education and culture and so on.
I'm making a beeline for the Prapanajivanamrita.
All right.
So,
Cool. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to meeting next time. Jai Shri Guru Dev.